Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. One thing I observed, among others, during the invasions of Afghanistan, Iraq, bombardment of Yugoslavia, bombardment of Syria, bombardment of Libya, was that those countries, none of those countries were able to punch back, to hit back at the aggressors, the attackers. And because they were too small and they didn't have the means. And obviously, after five examples of you are able to punch them, but they are not able to punch you back, you get used to that. So when you get tangled with someone who surprisingly is able and willing and acts by hitting you back, you are very surprised and very baffled and say, what the, how? And like, your reality is challenged, your view of reality. So this is what Russia can and will strike back the big mouths of certain blocks. In this case, you have the Baltic states and Poland, but talk about now specifically about Estonia, who had a big mouth and criticized Russia and poked the bear since 1991, where it allowed to be independent by Soviet Union and then by Russia. And now, since then, they've been just barking at the Russian bear. Now the barking turned into I don't know into yelling and hysteria after February 24th special operation. The Russians started in or invasion or war started in Ukraine, and they inserted themselves, the Baltic states and Poland, and in this case Estonia, inserted them itself in the equation without being invited, without being part of it, but it wants to because it has to follow certain orders provided by its boss, the big club's boss. And Russia hits back and threatens now and even acts upon the threats to a certain extent. I just posted a video with Russian helicopters crossing into, there were more than one incident, crossing into Estonia for a few minutes, and Estonia is very upset about it because that happened. And now it seems like Russia is doing even more than that. I'm not going to say he's going to shoot them, but it's a very more deeper meaning what they're doing right now towards Estonia. So this article comes from Bloomberg from June 21st, 2022, and this is the title. NATO member Estonia says it's targeted by Russian missile simulations. Russia is currently conducting military exercises with simulated missile attacks against Estonia, the Baltic nation said, warning of escalating tensions between a Moscow and a frontline NATO member. I think that NATO wants that, and it's using Estonia as a pawn, as it used Ukraine, I would say, in the same way. Estonia has no way to do anything to Russia, and it barks because it's in the shade of the big boss over there. But if it gets smacked real bad in one blow, then the big boss cannot do anything about it and will not risk elimination or the global catastrophe because of Estonia. I guarantee you that. So they're thinking that they're not they're not going to uh, Russia will not react in that manner. But nevertheless, sorry, I couldn't compete with the guy with the blower. He won, so I had to accept defeat and interrupt until he, with his lazy blower, had to blow certain things because he doesn't have a broom anymore. This is, the way it is. What can you do? Okay, let's move on. So I was talking about Estonia provoking, in my assessment, Russia because it has to do that, and Poland and Lithuania. So Estonia's defense ministry said that provocative behavior has intensified on Estonia's border with Russia ahead of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization summit scheduled for next week in Madrid, according to responses to emailed question on Tuesday. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it has to do with Lithuania more than Estonia in this case. But nevertheless, separately, the foreign ministry summoned Russia's ambassador to Tallinn, saying that a border patrol helicopter flew into Estonia airspace for 2 minutes on June 18, the first such instance since President Vladimir Putin launched his invasion of Ukraine. Estonia did not explain how it knew of the simulation, although Russia has made NATO countries the subject of military exercises in the past. Russia Foreign Ministry referred questions to the Defense Ministry, whose spokesman Igor Konashenkov didn't immediately reply to a request for comment. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov also didn't reply. Well, I think that if NATO tries to get more members in its so-called defensive alliance, it's so-called because it attacked and bombarded Yugoslavia without being attacked, and it bombed Libya without being attacked. And remember the coalition in Iraq? I don't think it was NATO under NATO flag. It was the coalition and so on. Nevertheless, if you do that, I should react somehow. And how am I going to react? By getting ready for war, because eventually that's what matters. Words, politicians, power, they have power to some extent. The power is in the hands of the ones who have in their hands weapons. I mean, you can be the president of whatever country you want. If someone meets you with a weapon in his hand, he's stronger than you, and you don't have people with weapons around you. If you have people with weapons around you, of course, you're going to be powerful than that person. So everything is about brute force. That's what we are. We pretend to be civilized, and we make all kind of rules that we break all the time. Look around you, and then that's why the civilization, flourish and then go back. It's a cycle of civilization, like 8 points, I think it is. It has. There are studies about that, and we are, I think, at 11 o'clock p.m. So Russia announced Tuesday that ships from its Baltic fleet will carry out large-scale maneuvers in the Gulf of Finland, including mine-laying, artillery firing, and anti-submarine drills, the Interfax news service reported. The exercise will take place as Russian naval vessels travel from the Baltiysk base in the Kaliningrad region to Kronstadt near St. Petersburg, along a route that runs past the 3 Baltic states, following 10 days of military exercises that ended in June 19. Estonia and Baltic neighbors Lithuania and Latvia have been among the most vocal advocates, or I would say pokers, poking Russians, of a stronger response to Putin's war. They want someone else to respond, not them. They can't respond. They're like this, like flies, just, like that. They want someone else to send their boys to die for them. That's why they're vocal. If they would be by themselves, they would be quiet as a dead man in the water. But what do you want? Advocates to a stronger response to Putin war in Ukraine. Like, what do you mean? Attack them? Host to several thousand troops from fellow NATO members, they have repeatedly reported Russian aircraft in their airspace. So they have NATO occupation forces. Why I say occupation? Because there's no Latvian, Lithuanian, or Estonian forces in the state of Washington, Oregon, or California defending the western NATO flank against China or North Korea. That's why they're under occupation. All the NATO forces are on other states but United States and France, by the way. Germany is under occupation since 1945, and it's still there. Japan, the same way. All these Romania and Poland have NATO forces, British and mostly British and American forces that will defend them from the Russian bear, really. Okay. So then you can yell politically because this guy's gonna have their boys killed for you. Well, if you sign up to that, go ahead. That's when you are part of an organization, then part of your liberties were limited, were taken away because you're part of a group now. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be be just.